Welcome to Insider's View, a series where we invite vendors from the EP sector to discuss the past, the present and the future. And we discuss topics which are relevant for you as customer, vendor or partner in the industry. And my guest today is Pouline Wagtberg from Deltek. Welcome.
Thank you.
Before we start discussing Deltek and the history, why not start with presentation of Pouline? Who is Pouline, your background and your role today at Deltek?
So, who's Pouline? Pouline is based out of Copenhagen in Denmark, very close to the Deltek office, actually. I have close to 20 years with Maconomy that later on became Deltek. I've had various roles. I started out being a business consultant for 4 or 5 years. And then I thought sales sounded a lot more fun. So I moved into sales, did some solution engineering, showing our solutions. Then I moved into account management, new biz, and finally where I am today, where I hold the responsibility for account management and our existing customers in what we refer to as rest of world. So it's customers outside North America.
Thank you. And that means that you have Maconomy under your nails.
Yes.
For many years back. And that's good for our discussion. My first introduction, I think, with Maconomy was something in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I had several clients that were needing new ERP systems, and they were working within marketing, advertising, and I realized at that time, I was rather new in the advising industry, that Maconomy had all the customers. They were really already had a really strong pace on the market within that sector. And it was two things. Maconomy was very strong within marketing, advertising companies, and using Mac and Apple as a device or operating system, which was rather unusual at that time.
Absolutely.
But that's a long time ago. If you give us some short summary, at least from where you have been part of the company, from when was the company founded and some milestones along the road?
Yeah. Maconomy was, to begin with, a finance system for Mac users. So you could say the focus was really on agencies. And I think that's what you heard back in the early 90s, maybe. But I think they soon realized that focus was too narrow. So instead of just focusing on Mac users, it also became available for PC users. And instead of just finance, project cost was added to the solution as well. So it became more like a full ERP system. So I think that was a very important milestone. Where I got to know Maconomy was when I started at Rampel back in 98 it was. And that was the same time as they signed a contract with Maconomy to implement Maconomy. And Rampel, everybody knows that's engineering, it's not agencies. And most of them are using PCs. So I think that was a very important milestone. And then, of course, the second big one was being acquired by Deltek in 2010. And Deltek, just a little bit of background of Deltek as well, was a company founded also 40 years ago in US. It was founded by father and son, the Deleskis, and they both had a background within government contracting. And they used that experience to create a new piece of software that could support other businesses doing government. And they had a lot of success with that. The company, they named it a combination of the last name, so Del, and Tech, so it became Deltek, and the solution, which still exists and is one of the flagships, is called Costpoint. But the milestone for us, or for Maconomy, if you could say that, was really Deltek thinking, okay, there's a potential in Europe. So how do we, the easiest way, get into Europe? And they started looking at companies in Europe, and they met Maconomy, and that was a beginning of a new adventure for Maconomy. And Deltek for that matter. So they acquired Maconomy back in 2010. And then 2011 was the year where the whole integration of the two companies happened.
And I'd like to stay there while regarding the acquisition. It's 14 years ago, so you have forgotten some things. But my understanding at that time was that, from our perspective as working as advisors, we were a bit unsure the future path for Maconomy at that time.
Yeah.
And I mean, the industry has gone up and down several times since the millennium, and Maconomy was one of the players that they had a very strong footprint on the Nordic market. But from our perspective, we were unsure at that time. So I believe that when Deltek came onto the playground on the Nordic market, for us that was a turning point. And I think looking at the success from that time, that was a major difference for the company. And as you said, Deltek was strong in US, but rather weak or
more or
less not existing in Europe. And Maconomy, I don't know if Maconomy had customers at that time in US.
We did.
Yeah, okay, a few, so it was a good merge of that, from that sense. But at the same time, looking at the market today, you haven't brought Costpoint to Europe. So more or less what happened is that Maconomy went to US.
Yes.
Of course, you have other solutions. We will come to that, Vantage, etc. So, and somewhere along the road, you also, as a milestone, moved over to cloud.
Yes.
And we'll come to that, but that's also a turning point in some sense.
Absolutely.
Let's give a short summary of Deltek today for the viewers that don't really know so much about Deltek as an organization. How large are you today, the employees and countries?
So we just acquired another company, Replicon. So that added 800 employees on top of what we had already. So we are 4,000 something.
Okay.
Today, I don't remember the exact number, but we have grown a lot over the years that we have been part of the Deltek family. I think just to go back to the acquisition and what happened then, because I think just like you, we were a bit, so now what's going to happen? And what really happened was that we got a lot more manpower in a way to do what we wanted to do. You know, before the acquisition, we had all our engineers in Copenhagen, and we still do that. So all the thinking behind the development of Maconomy is happening in Copenhagen. But now we are supported by a huge number of developers in Makati, in India, and in the US as well. So that was one important milestone. Then I think it was also a process of getting a bit more structured in our approach to how we work, how we develop, how we secure the quality of our releases and stuff like that. So that was also some of the big changes that we implemented the years after the acquisition, really.
Yeah.
In terms of our focus, as you said, Deltek was Costpoint. And Costpoint is super US-centric. You will never see that be sold in Europe. So what Deltek really wanted was to let us continue to do what we were doing already. And that's the same with all the products that they actually acquire. They acquire them in order to keep them as is. And they acquire them with the focus on this needs to be a complement to the ERP systems that we already have. So since Maconomy already had the focus on project-focused businesses, that's what they wanted us to keep focusing on. So in that sense, there hasn't really been any change. I would say today we are even more focused on projects than we used to be before, because we were a little bit, if someone rang us and said we would like a system, we would say, okay, what do you do? Well, that's fine. We'll make it fit. But today it's more a validation. If someone calls, we validate right away. Do you deliver projects? Yes. Okay, we can continue. No, then we politely say, okay, I think you need to call someone else.
Yeah. And I think that goes through all the other competitors at the same time. That they were all hunting all customers 20 years ago, but now they are rather validating the customers before putting too much energy on them.
Yeah.
And I think that's wise. We have discussed now US and Nordics. What about the rest of the world? How can we give a short summary of what's outside Europe and US?
Yeah. So we have ANZ as well as a big region. We have our office in Sydney, where we sell mainly Vantagepoint, one of the other ERP systems that we have, and WorkBook. And actually, WorkBook was a Danish solution as well, just as Maconomy. It was actually one of our big competitors in Denmark back in the days, because they solely focused on agencies. So when you said that your early experience with Maconomy was that we had agencies, WorkBook was really an annoying competitor.
Okay.
But they got acquired a couple of years after us, and still agency focused, and a big solution in ANZ, primarily in Australia and New Zealand.
Okay, but is WorkBook also similar to Maconomy in the scope of the business, the system processes or
processes the same, but it speaks very much the language of agencies.
Okay,
so it's really minded on creative people working with the system. Okay, if you can put it that way. Yeah, absolutely.
And this brings us to the next topic, which is more or less the portfolio. Because I think from a Nordic perspective, we only see, or many of us only see Maconomy. Maconomy is a solution, but you have a portfolio with more solutions on the market.
Yes.
And some in US and some also in the Nordics. But please give us a summary of the scope of the portfolio.
Yeah, I'll try, because we do have many solutions, but overall we have a number of ERP solutions. Costpoint being one of them, but US-centric.
Yeah.
Vantagepoint, which is a rather new solution, very similar to Maconomy, mainly focused on US and Europe outside the Nordics. Then we have Maconomy, as you know already. Yeah. Maconomy is sold all over the world. There's no limitations on where we can pitch Maconomy. WorkBook for agencies. And besides that, we have a number of, you could call it, add-on products. Talent is our HR recruitment, talent development system. It's product agnostic in the sense that you can combine it with Maconomy, Costpoint, Vantagepoint, whatever. Snapper, another one made for field reporting for architects, can also be used with all our ERP solutions. And there's many others. But I think the focus for all of them is that they somehow can complement the ERP solution.
But this means that you're offering some kind of a one-stop shop for companies within agencies or project-centric organizations.
Yes.
Let's give at least 1 minute or two regarding talent and HR, as that is something that is exploding on the market currently. Yes. Everyone is acquiring or purchasing HR systems in some way. What are your plans for that when it comes to Deltek? Because it's a tough challenge outside of the door. I think we have almost 30 HR systems that are standalone and very strong.
Yes.
And we've seen vendors within ERP, such as IFS, Microsoft, and Infor, and they haven't really succeeded to launch them as standalone HR systems, but they are launched as a complement to the existing systems.
Yeah.
So is that also the path for Deltek talent, or?
Now I'm working with many different countries, and it's never the same HR system that they want. And there's so many local requirements that you need to comply with as an HR system.
And I think the challenge, I think, with HR is that it started with payroll, and then we had an add-on, and now we have so many. The 360 perspective of HR is so large today, from recruiting, so it demands a lot of focus to be able to support it. So what we see on the market is that many customers are adding more and more add-on systems. So they have perhaps 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 HR systems. So it's a tough market but I understand that it's a good complement to have being integrated directly with the project and the finance, of course. You mentioned Vantage, and without comparing too much, one comparison we could make is, if my understanding is that Maconomy, to a large extent, have large customers, with many employees. Vantage, at the average level, have smaller customers. So, do you see on your roadmap, though, we believe that Vantage will enter the Nordic market, or do we have plans, or how do we consider the small customers?
Yeah, so like it is today, we sell Maconomy to small customers. We go all the way down to 20 employees. Could go lower, but that would depend on also what's the growth potential of that customer, because, you know, the investment is substantial in a way. But yeah, we do have customers from 20 people and up. Of course, there's a difference in terms of then what type of Maconomy are we pitching, depending on size. And on top of that, what's the implementation that we go in with? Is it like the big bang where we turn every stone? Or is it where we say, here's a pre-configured solution, and then more focus on how to adopt the solution within the company? So we will always sell Maconomy to all sizes, but I would not reject the thought of Vantagepoint at some point being sold in the Nordics as well. But I mean, again, to go back to the boring compliance stuff, countries have different requirements to solutions like ERPs, and we also have that in the Nordics. And the Nordics are not easy in any way, so it's also a matter of making sure that Vantagepoint is compliant with what we want and set out for in the Nordics. So maybe someday.
Continuing regarding customer segment and Maconomy and Vantage, as you said, when we look at the customer segments, perhaps for Maconomy and Vantage, a comparison with SAP, going back 20 years ago, SAP launched SAP Business One.
Yes.
And the purpose, I think, was to grow the market from the top to also take the small customers. At that time, at least on the Nordic market, they had a great challenge. Not depending on the system, depending on that SAP wasn't really prepared from an organization side how to meet those customers. Because they're so different. Do you see that as a challenge or a topic if you're using Maconomy also for small companies, how to meet them?
Not today. Back in 2010-ish, where we launched the first version of our cloud solution, which actually was coming from Maconomy First, I think it was called. We did have a challenge. We found out that we had to be very careful on picking first of all, the right sales reps to pitch to smaller companies. You couldn't use the same for big and small because there was some differences on how you present the solution and the implementation and how to use it. Secondly, when we got to the actual implementation, you also had to differentiate between different types of consultants because, having someone just walking out of the door of Ramble, then walking into a company with 20 people, it's not working. I mean, it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
So we learned that lesson, I would say. And today the consultants are kind of experts in dealing with different sizes and way of thinking.
So looking on your offering today with Maconomy, I understand there's no bottom line, but how low is it reasonable to go from a normal perspective when it comes to Maconomy? 100 employees, 50 employees, 20 employees?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's number of employees, but in combination with what type of company it is. How complicated is the business in a way? And you could say the more complicated it is, the better fit. I mean, if it's just, putting hours into a system and then creating an invoice, then 20 employees would not be a good fit. But if it's 20 employees working on projects with different locations, different currencies, different disciplines, stuff like that, then it makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of the two, really. And then often, we meet customers or companies with maybe 15 employees, but they tell us, next year, the ambition is to be 50 and then 100.
Yeah.
Then there's the potential, and then it makes sense to implement something like Maconomy.
Yeah, and perhaps organizations that are working international or having many offices.
Exactly.
And, And this brings us also to the discussion of cloud, of course.
Yes.
Going back to the first, it was a cloud-based system, and that is 10 years ago almost, or something like that. So where are we today when it comes to cloud? What is your definition of cloud? Because on the market, we're talking about private cloud and public cloud and multi-tenant and single tenant. And what's your perspectives? Where are you today and where are you heading?
Yeah. So I've been part of the full journey. And I remember when cloud was introduced, it was actually our Swedish office being first movers on this. And I said, I don't like that. I don't like the cloud thought of, being distanced in a way from the product and not having hands-on, I want to change this and then I can just do it. So there was a little bit of resistance, I would say, to begin with. Today, it's all about cloud, really. We still provide the option to our customers to choose between on-prem and cloud. But I don't recall having sold any on-prem solutions the past, 3-4 years. We offer three types of cloud solutions. There's the multi-tenant, out-of-the-box solution for mainly smaller companies. It's 100% pre-configured. It's like, take it as is, and then it's with the focus on training the users. Then we have the middle solution where you have the option to change stuff like names, hide what you're not using, stuff like that. And then finally, the enterprise solution, which in my world is comparable with having an on-prem solution where you can change business logic, etc. So, yeah.
But that also means that similar to some other large ERP vendors, you plan to still continue to offer both on-prem and cloud. As long as there is a demand. Yeah, absolutely. We also still have customers on-prem, existing customers that we have had for many, many years. I would say the majority already converted to cloud, and if not already, they have a plan to do it. Yeah. Cloud, and also move over to the combination of cloud and partners. Your delivery organization is a combination of both Deltek resources and partner resources. Yeah. But at the same time, I think our understanding or experience of Maconomy and Deltek is that, well, we don't see 50 partners, rather few partners. So what's your ambition and strategy when it comes to partners from a Nordic perspective?
Yeah. From a Nordic perspective, well, Deltek has already always, since they acquired us, had a huge network of partners. So, of course, when they acquired us, they were like, you should have partners too. And at that time, I think we had one. And they mainly served South Africa and a little bit of Asia. It was not part of our DNA to have partners. Today, it is a thing. Like, we have a partner channel team only focusing on adding new partners. And we do also have partners in the Nordics, and it's growing. It also requires quite an investment for a partner to learn the product in order to be able to sell it, but also implement it.
Yeah.
But it has very high focus to add more partners. It's just about finding them and making sure there's a chemistry and that both parties are getting value from it. But yeah.
So if we discuss Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, roughly how many partners do we have?
Yeah, so I think we are around 4 or 5 partners.
Yeah.
The fun fact around our partners is that the biggest ones are former Maconomy employees.
Yeah.
And that has made it easier in a way because they knew the product already and they also know the company, Deltek.
Yeah. Has the transformation to cloud, has that changed the situation for partners? Has it had any impact in their business or?
I would maybe say in a way it has become easier to be a partner. In the sense that with cloud comes a more structured approach to work. Both work with the solution, but also around the solution. Even though you have the option to extend, change the solution in the cloud, it always comes with some goal of standardizing.
Yeah.
Both the solution, but also the processes around it. And that makes it easier for a partner to engage and take over ownership of an agreement.
I'm going back just one step to referring to the customers. If we look on your list of customers, it's rather impressive list. You have not all, but many of the large agencies. That's Maconomy customers from a Nordic perspective.
Yeah.
So the question mark is that, well, what is the potential to growing? Because you already have many of the large customers on the market. And moving downwards will mean larger competence with other ERP systems that are perhaps easier or simpler. So let's touch that. What is the potential for Maconomy to keep market share or to grow market share? And how will you succeed with that as you already have many of the large customers?
Yeah, true. The thing is, if you look at the Nordics, then for Denmark, for instance, we have not all, but a lot of the big engineering companies. So you could almost say that that's where we have been most successful in Denmark, besides the agencies. If you look at Sweden, we are very strong on consulting companies.
Yeah.
If you look at Norway, it's legal companies. So I think where we see the potential is, okay, take all the success that we have from the A&E architects and engineers in Denmark and copy that into Norway and Sweden. And the same with the legal, copy that to Sweden and Denmark. So in that sense, I mean, balance out the success that we have in each country. That goes for Finland as well. And we already have a footprint within those industries in the different countries, but there's a lot more potential. And I think that's where my role is important in terms of working with existing customers. We need to create a lot more buzz around the happy customers that we have, customer success stories and such, to support our new biz guys in selling into that wide space we have in the different countries. And that goes for all sizes, really.
Meaning that can we foresee that, well, there will be some more profiling of Deltek in the coming time, branding of the brand Deltek?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would love that to happen, and I hope it's going to happen because there's so many good stories to tell.
Yeah, yeah. There's one topic we haven't touched yet, AI.
Yes.
And we can have a discussion of AI for several hours, but just to touch it, in all spaces we see that all vendors are investing heavily within AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a large difference between how they are investing, but they are investing in it. Some organizations are more focusing on supporting the user in the daily business of making things easier. And some vendors are focusing on analysis and things like that. So when it comes to Deltek, of course you are on the ball when it comes to AI, but can you give us some kind of view of where you are today and what you are launching for the customers? What is your message to the customers regarding AI today?
Yesterday, I had a short trip down of memory lane. I was watching The Matrix, the movie with my sons. They are 18 and 25. And I just realized that movie from late 90s, I think it is, talks about AI. It's all about AI and AI as being this evil thing.
Yeah.
And then today, it's just, a daily thing in our lives. Privately, Netflix and Spotify coming with personalized recommendations and stuff. And then in the work life as well, where AI for me, AI for our customers is very much around efficiency. Be more efficient. Be more insightful on what's coming in the future. Save time. Exchange manual processes with digital ones. So that's the requirement that I meet from our customers all the time. How can you help us with that? What do you have in the AI area? So what we have done is we have created our own Gen AI. It has a name, Della.
Okay.
And what Della's focus is on enhancing the project delivery, really. So it's all around the projects again. So an example is you being a project manager. You're meeting the customer, in a couple of hours, and you ask Della to produce a project summary for you.
Yeah.
And you could have done that yourself, but it would have taken you hours or maybe even days to combine data from different modules and go back in history. But Della provides you with that, I would call it first draft of a full project summary. And then, of course, it's up to you to enrich it.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of functionalities that we are going to deliver with Della.
Meaning that if we look at the user group, project managers, resource managers that are using many hours today on planning and analyzing, they can use this assistant.
Absolutely.
To reduce
assistant
time.
Is a good term for that.
Anything regarding analysis? I mean, as you collect much data of people working in the projects, good projects, bad projects, working hours, and I know you already have good scorecards in Maconomy for following up and tracing your projects, but do you see that AI will bring some value into that area also?
I think for me, AI, again, is this, fast way of getting access to data. As you say, we already have nice reporting tools, dashboards, etc. But being able to just place a prompt to the Maconomy system or whatever ERP system, and then have the AI to produce the result to you in a fast manner and in a very agile way is going to make a big difference. Yeah.
I think we'll come back to AI in a couple of years and see what's happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's look ahead, the future, the next coming 20 years. Maconomy and Deltek is today, from a Nordic perspective, your market position in Denmark and Norway, Sweden and Finland, of course. What are your ambitions? And I mean there's a lot of competition out there. We have many players, and things are going so fast now with development and AI and cloud. So how will Deltek cope with this challenge? And how will Deltek be able to grow on the market? What is your plans? What is your ambitions?
So the plan is to do what we already do. You know, we want to continue to be market leader within project-focused businesses. So we're not going to change that. We want to explore the potential. You know, as I mentioned earlier on, you know, grow big on A&E, Sweden, Finland, Norway. Same with legal for the other countries. The way to do it is to continue to work with our customers really on making sure that we deliver what they need. So collaborating with customers and then of course industry experts, and rely on that in terms of where we're taking the product. We have actually introduced the ideas portal, which is in a very simple way, customers creating matters of, you know, we would like this or this and this and this. And then other customers can vote on it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes part of our roadmap. And I think that's the way forward, like being super focused on listening to our customers, partner with our customers, and making sure that we keep deliver what they want.
If you would ask me,
yes,
I would say that you have a large potential based on, I mean, you've been on the market for so many years. You have a system with all the processes, finance and project and all the scorecards and things. But the potential, I think, comes to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, AI, and how you could reduce unmanageable working time for the project managers, the CFOs, the controllers. But you have the data and you have the systems. So it's about utilizing that and getting the customers to use perhaps 90% and not 70% of the system. But it will take some education and some training and of course some marketing regarding customer cases. But I believe you have a large potential. Then there's a question mark regarding the customers on smaller customers. If you are able to meet that market and meet the competition there.
I think you're absolutely right.
I'll give you a last chance to give some view to our listeners regarding, do you have any recommendation for, it could be your existing customers or it could be potential customers when it comes to Deltek? What is your recommendation for the market if they are planning to do some investment in this type of system? How could you coach them?
How can I coach them? Well, I think my recommendation is always to make a very detailed and good evaluation of the different vendors. Like an investment in an ERP is a big thing, whether you're being 20 people or 2,000 people. So make sure you choose the right ones to engage with. And coming from a business where we are very focused on a specific area and specific industries, I mean, make sure that you have that fit to the vendor that you're going to engage with. Because when the investment is done, it's for many years, and you need to make sure that the solution that you end up choosing is made for your type of company.
It sounds like getting married.
It is getting married.
Pouline, it's been a pleasure to have you here. I thank you for that. Nice talking to you, and interesting to hear about the Deltek story, and also regarding the present and the future. And I would like to say thank you for you who has listened to the interview. Stay tuned. We will come with more interviews ahead. So just check out our website, HerbertNathan.com. Thank you for listening.